Konnichiwa, senpai desu. Have you ever felt limited by static images when you're trying to draw a tricky pose? You wanted the pose to be slightly different from the reference images you found from the internet, but you don't know how to tweak it. So your only choice left is to take a picture of yourself as reference. Well, I've done that, and it's not exactly accurate or flattering. But don't worry, there's a 3D pose reference tool called Just Sketch Me. Want to tweak an arm position? Rotate it. You can adjust and view your pose from any angle. Also, there's 200 plus pre-built poses and 20 plus pre-built hand poses available to use, so you don't need to fiddle around with all the niggly little joints on the hands. It's like having your own personal model that cooperates 100% of the time. One thing I really like about Just Sketch Me is how I can use it for my figure drawing practice. It's a fantastic way to train my pose rotation. It helps me to double check my drawn poses from different angles. It's super handy because I can easily spot any mistakes I might have made. If you're into character design or illustration art, I can't recommend Just Sketch Me enough. They've got this amazing pose library with over 200 preset poses for pretty much any scenario you can think of. Just Sketch Me has been a massive help in creating my art, and I think it could be for you too. Whether you're polishing your skills or working on a big project, this tool can make your art process smoother and way more fun. If you're interested, sign up to Just Sketch Me for free with no time limit, and you better hurry. The first 100 people to use my code ARTSENPAI to sign up to Just Sketch Me Pro will get 20% off. Have you ever found yourself sketching an amazing character, but when you draw the background, everything goes haywire? It's like your character is in the wrong universe. Well, you're not alone. Today, I will teach you step by step how to master basic perspectives like a pro. Alright, without further ado, let's begin. First off, let's quickly go through 1-point, 2-point, and 3-point perspectives. 1-point perspective is like a straight road that stretches into the distance. Everything leads back to 1 point on the horizon. It's simple and super effective in creating depth. 2-point perspective, on the other hand, is like looking at a building from an angle, with lines converging at 2 different points on the horizon. Those 2 vanishing points are usually located somewhere outside of the frame. As for 3-point perspective, it gives you the most realistic look as it covers all 3 dimensions. You will get a bird's eye view if the vanishing point is placed at the bottom of the horizon line. Just like 2-point perspective, notice how the 3 vanishing points are located outside of the frame as well. Alright, I want you to pause the video and grab your tablet because we're going to draw a 2-point perspective box. Firstly, draw a horizontal line. Split your horizontal line into 2 equal sides by drawing 1 vertical line at the middle and 2 at each side. Then, place 1 vanishing point at the left and another one at the right. Start pulling lines from both sides. Finally, draw the cube. Congratulations, you now understand the basic perspective. Moving on to the next section. Now you might be wondering, how can I better understand perspective? Well, the answer lies in cubes and cameras. Let's play around with a cube to understand perspective in action. To get a clearer picture, we'll examine it from the front, top, and side. When we're looking at this cube from the front, we could directly see a square surface. The top surface of the cube is slightly visible because the cube is positioned below the camera's field of view. And if we look at the cube from the side, we would also see a square surface. The top surface of the cube is visible too, because the cube is positioned below the camera's field of view. However, observing the cube from the top will show the viewer a perfect square, which is the top surface of the cube. Now, let's keep the cube at the same horizon level and turn it 45 degrees. As you rotate it, you will notice that the top view of the cube starts to change. The sides also begin to reveal themselves, creating an entirely new shape. But we're not done yet. If we place the cube way below the camera's field of view, the perspective of the front view changes significantly. As the cube moves further away from the camera's field of view, it appears more distorted, with all vertical lines seemingly converging downward to a vanishing point. This simple exercise is important in understanding how an object's position can drastically change its appearance. Now this is where things get a little bit harder. The technique that we are going to learn today is called division and duplication. Picture this. You've just drawn a perfect square along the perspective lines, and now you want to draw another one just like it. Here's how you do it with the duplication technique. Step 1. Draw 2 lines that cross each other right in the middle of the square, forming an X. This simple step helps you find the center of the square. Next, draw a horizontal line that cuts across the square. If it looks like a treasure map, you're doing it right. And here's the tricky part. Draw 2 lines extending from the corners of your square. These lines should pass through this point right here. And voila! You've got yourself a perfect duplicate of your original square.
Senpai, why not just copy and paste?
Copy and paste is useful only if we're dealing with flat 2D shapes, but things get a little bit tricky when it's in 3D. Let's see how this works with 3D shapes like cubes. Imagine this. You've got a cube and you want to duplicate it on top along the z-axis. I mean, you can copy and paste, but it might not portray an accurate perspective. If we are able to see the top of this cube, the eye level would be set around here. So anything above this point needs to follow a certain perspective. This problem can be easily solved by using the same technique we've just learned, but there's a slight twist. Instead of drawing those lines on just one plane, you need to repeat the process on all the planes. Yes, every single one of them. Once you're done, you would have a perfectly proportioned cube sitting on top of your original cube with the correct perspective. Besides, you can also use this duplication technique when drawing objects of equal size that recede into the distance, like staircase railings or street lamps. As these items get closer to the vanishing point, they appear closer together. But remember, they still need to follow the rules of perspective. So with the division technique, we're going to tackle dividing a square into 2, 3, 4, and 5 equal parts. Let's start with dividing a square into 2. Start by drawing an X in the middle of your square, followed by a vertical line straight through the center. And it's done. Now, let's take the challenge up a notch and divide the square into 3 equal parts. Start off with the same way with the axe. Then, draw that vertical line through the center again. After that, draw one line from the top corner towards the bottom center point, and repeat for the opposite side. And it's done. Apply the same steps if you're dividing the square into 4. Start off with the same way with the axe. Then, repeat the process on each half of the divided square. And it's done. Finally, let's split this thing into 5 parts. Start by drawing an X in the middle of your square, followed by a vertical line straight through the center. Next, repeat the process on each half of the divided square. After that, draw 2 lines extending from the middle of your square, one to the top left corner and the other one to the top right corner. Do the same for the opposite side. These 4 points will be the guiding points for your split. And voila! These division techniques are not just cool math tricks, they're incredibly practical too, especially when you're sketching objects in perspective, like this cuboid here.
But senpai, what's the benefit of dividing them? How can I use it in my drawings?
Well, I'm glad you asked. This is the part where I show you how it works. Let's put everything we've learned so far to the test. For this part, we'll be drawing a house with the correct perspective. Based on this reference picture, we're going to recreate this house. Firstly, size up the perspective of the house. Draw some simple guidelines from various points of the house. As you're drawing, you'll be able to identify the vanishing point and the horizon line. Let's start by sketching a basic cube to represent the house. After that, try to transfer those perspective guidelines onto your own canvas. These lines are your anchor points. Now, here's a small tip for Procreate users. Feel free to use the built-in drawing guide feature in the program. If you're using Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint, you might want to check out the drawing guides in your own software. Next up is proportions. Proportion ensures that everything from the windows to the roof are all perfectly placed and sized. To do that, we would need to use the division and duplication techniques we've learned earlier. They'll help us to break down the house into well-balanced sections and create consistent patterns. Once you've got the draft of the house ready, it's time to start adding the line art and details. Now, there might be a few hiccups along the way, like the perspective getting a bit wacky or the proportions not looking right. But don't worry, it's all part of the process. So there you go. Drawing a detailed house in perspective might seem a little intimidating at first, but with a little perseverance, you'll end up with a realistic and visually stunning piece of art. You could even draw the same house from an entirely different perspective using all the techniques we've learned in this video. If you're interested, you can sign up for my Patreon to get access to all the references from this video, including the house drawing in PSD format. That's it for today's video. Feel free to support me on Patreon, I really appreciate it. Please drop a like, subscribe to my channel, and follow me on Twitter. DM me if you want a commission from me. Alright, that's all from me. Jana, guys.